Let's go to this story, which does have some interesting connections. Foreign nationals are more than 3 times as likely to be arrested for sexual offences as British citizens. That's according to the first analysis of its kind by the Centre for Migration Control. This is data from police, the Home Office and the Office of National Statistics. More than 9,000 foreign nationals were arrested for sexual offences in England and Wales last year, making up a quarter of such arrests. Kevin Hurley is a former detective chief superintendent, often helps us out on these kind of stories. Afternoon to you, Kevin. I mean, it's naturally a fairly dramatic figure to see this. One would reasonably say, why this disproportionality? Can you shine any light?
Well, I mean, I don't really think there's any research or evidence being done on it, but as someone who's worked and travelled broadly in some of the areas where a lot of these people come from, I would say it comes down to cultural values. So, if you like, the rump of the population in the UK have a certain way of behaving and have a certain attitude towards females, which may not necessarily be found in other parts of the world, perhaps the Middle East, certain parts of South Asia, and so on. And as a result, the attitude to females that is a cultural one, as opposed to, if you like, a colour-driven one, may well influence the way in which some of these people think towards females. So, for example, Albanians tend as a group to have particular attitudes to women, and I'm stereotyping here. But it's no surprise, therefore, that Albanians are very, very prolific in terms of trafficking of women across Europe. So,
and they were on this list as, I think, the number one nationality.
They were indeed. And of course, what is interesting, and if I may take this story a little bit further, is of course at one time, most of the people coming into the country in the rubber boats were in fact Albanians.
Yeah.
But since they've now got their foot soldiers in to control the entire cocaine trade for the United Kingdom, with the exception of Merseyside, the Albanian, if you like, entrepreneurial criminals have stopped coming to this country. I know I've gone off down a rabbit hole, but the issue on it is that we will have this disproportionality because the culture of certain elements who come recently to the UK does not fit in with the rump value here. So you will find, for example, that people who are in this country of Hindu, Sikh, West Indian extraction, this figure does not represent them because the values that they have are the more traditional ones towards women in this country. Whereas in other parts of the world, women are not treated the same. And we can see in Afghanistan that the attitude towards women in Afghanistan is quite appalling. So we should not be surprised that if we've got disproportionate numbers of Afghanistan young men coming into the country, they will be involved disproportionately in sexual offences. And that's not to say all people from Afghanistan are a problem, because having worked for 2 years there alongside a lot of brave Afghan soldiers and police, I can say they are decent, honourable people. But the culture comes from some parts of the world.
And that, of course, is... I was just going to... Go on, Kevin, sorry.
Why aren't we deporting these people who've committed criminal
100%.
offences who are subject to potential deportation?
But isn't this the same problem that there is something in the Venn diagram here about the grooming gangs of people's sensitivities, you know, scared to talk about this. Everything we're discussing now, you'd never hear Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer say any of this at a press conference. They wouldn't even go there. And that's been the problem, isn't it? It's, you know, people don't want to say what's right in front of them because they think they'll be accused of something nefarious, or it makes them a racist, or it means that they're, you know, an unkind or not a nice person. So instead they keep quiet, despite the fact that everybody else can see quite clearly, look, it's not about every person from that group of countries, but there is an underlying theme here, and some areas culturally are way back to where we are, and that's why we have some of these problems. But you just don't hear anybody say it.
Well, you're right. And if we talk specifically about the child rape gangs that we've seen so much of in over 30 British cities at the moment, it will never be addressed until we focus on the intelligence that we have.
Yeah.
And the intelligence tells us that certain elements of Pakistani males who come from the Mirpur, Kashmir region of Pakistan are disproportionately involved in this particular type of offending. So until we look at that, we can't look at the cultural and social reasons that's causing that to happen, because not all Pakistanis, by a long chalk, are involved in that activity. But if you will not actually address the nub of the problem, you will not be able to work with that group to deal with it. But the other issue on that is, part of the reason why this has happened is because the police have failed, as have the social services, to deal with this issue properly, because they're concerned about being accused of Islamophobia or of racism. So the net result of it is they'd far rather leave little girls who are generally looked after children from social care, and they're there quite often because they've been a problem in the past, leave them to their fate because it's the easiest route to go.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing to say here is this is more a cultural issue rather than a colour issue, and people will tend to associate colour with that. So there are certain groups within UK society who are as white as I am, who are also involved in grooming activity. So it's not a race issue, it's a cultural one.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Kevin, thank you. Kevin Hurley, former Detective Chief Superintendent.